gonna go fast. This is gonna be slow. It's gonna be a slow one. Real slow. Like molasses in December in the Northern Hemisphere. In Vermont. Real slow.
Can't.
She can, don't worry. What's up, Nerdmigos? I'm the Jive Talking Nerd, John Norgrove. We might keep that shit in. This is Review Jive. We are talking about...
Behind the Mask, the Rise of Leslie Vernon.
Yeah. Every time I hear that name, Leslie Vernon, I'm just like, is it like Leslie Vernon? Vernon took an axe and gave her dad 40 whacks? And I'm like, no, that's a guy. And that's a totally different name. But in my mind, they're similar enough in sound.
So weird.
Yeah.
So weird.
I don't know why. So, this is Behind the Mask. Real quickly, we're going to get into... We both love this movie. We were talking about this during the movie. This is easily top 5 for you.
Easy. This might even be my favorite of all time, but it's really hard for me to say, this is my favorite horror movie, this is my favorite movie of all time.
That's the Sophie's choice of movie
This
reviews,
is
horror movies.
absolutely one of my top 5, and I love every single friggin' moment of this movie.
Oh yeah, it's a perfect movie.
Including Leslie Vernon's little soul patch.
I mean... We don't need soul patches.
It was the early 2000s.
We don't need to snap into Flavor Town. Fuck that guy. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Anywho'sin. Yeah, so on the opposite side of things, not that opposite. I love this movie. This is easily top 10 for me. Maybe top 5, but even that's kind of hard to nail down. But definitely at least top 10 for me. However... When I'm thinking about the movie, like, if we haven't seen the movie in a while and I'm thinking about it, I'm just like, do I like this movie? But then when I watch the movie, I'm like, oh my god, this movie's perfect. I have zero complaints. This is amazing. So, there's a disconnect with the, maybe, like, early viewings of the movie for me or something. I don't know. But I do, like, really, really love this movie. I'm gonna read The Thing. It's quite weird.
Okay.
Yeah, be prepared for this. Again, this is one of those movies where I honestly don't know that I've ever even heard the movie described before.
You know what? I don't either. I think I just remember seeing it.
Like, I've just talked about it.
I'm pretty sure I remember seeing it at a time where I just picked movies.
The written word
had
had yet to be
Yeah, we just,
developed.
like, chiseled stuff into, like, tablets.
They just watched it on the back of some guy's head who had, like, a big precoggy brain that was
it was like a brontosaurus. We used a brontosaurus. Get with it.
You know, you put a light bulb in a stork's mouth and then it projected through the side of a stegosaurus.
We used carrier pigeons.
You've seen the Flintstones. You know what's going on here. Anywho, nice and normal looking Leslie Vernon. I already don't like the way that sounds. Like they're forcing us to believe that he's not normal looking, and he looks like a regular
nice
guy.
And normal looking in the beginning.
He's normal looking He's a normal looking guy. He doesn't look like a mutant.
All right, continue.
In fact, we've talked about this before on other horror movies. I don't know why they keep saying that. Nice, normal looking Leslie Vernon, played by Nathan Baesel, has an obsession with movie-style slashers like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger. Leslie decides to follow in the footsteps of his heroes and, ever the self-promoter, invites documentary filmmaker, played by Angela Goethals, and her crew to follow him around as he constructs his own grisly legacy.
Wow, I would say that actually does not accurately describe that movie at all.
No, yeah, okay, so, couple things to break down here. Couple 47 things to break down here. First of all, to call him just a fan of slasher flicks belies literally the plot of this fucking movie.
Yeah, because the plot of this movie, the beginning, so there's like the first 2 acts and then there's the final act, right? So the first 2 acts of this movie is Leslie Vernon taking along these documentary filmmakers who are probably like in college doing some sort of project, as he talks to them about how he is essentially a professional serial killer, but not like... But like in the way that there's like a slasher, like he's breaks down all the stuff
slasher.
Yeah, he's
like
a professional
horror
slasher, like horror slasher.
Yeah.
So think of like the things that you would see in a slasher movie. So like for instance, there's one where he's going through all the cardio that he has to do for this job, like this role that he has.
He directly addresses the shit that you see in movies. He's like you always see, and I think he uses Jason. No, or Michael Myers, but I think he uses Jason in the example, where he's like, you always see, like, Jason's just walking, and these kids are, like, running for their lives, but Jason's always
just, like,
keeping
walking.
up with it.
So he's like,
he
you
goes,
guys have no
you
idea.
have to do like insane amounts of cardio and be in like peak physical conditioning to be able to walk and appear to be walking as fast as like a bunch of young 20-something or 18-something teenagers are like full blow running. Yeah. Right? So it's very
There's a lot of things
aware
like that.
Of stuff.
They also break down a lot of the things about like the trope of the horror movies. So like the virgin girl, she goes to like the library or whoever to like find the info, and that's when she has like the moment with like the serial killer, and then you get the history and the backstory. So it breaks down all of these common tropes and themes inside of these movies from this documentary standpoint of the person being the slasher, and it is fucking delightful.
It's amazing, and the film crew is very. The film crew treats this like, oh, we're interviewing. I guess you could almost say the film crew treats this as though they're interviewing an obscene fan, fan who's so much of a fan as to try to do the same thing. Yeah. Right, where like they don't fully believe that this is what he's going to do, but the way that he's talking about it and the way that his mentor talks about it.
Because you also meet Leslie Vernon's mentor and his wife, whose wife was one of the mentor's victims at one point in time. It is a delightful.
The mentor is easily my favorite character in this movie, and arguably, probably one of my favorite horror characters. Full fucking stop. Yeah. Because he's like kooky and absurd and crazy and retired, but there's also scenes where he's talking about like, oh, you gotta make sure that it's all about the fear and all this kind of stuff, and like it's down here so you can't see it in frame, and he's like, yeah, it's all about the fear, and then he stands up or whatever, and the camera pans by, and the carrots he's been chopping are like fucking pureed baby food carrots because he's like so good with his knife skills. Or like when they first go to see him and they have to dig him out of a sensory deprivation chamber, and he's been down there for like fucking 3 days or something.
Because at the end, because like you gotta think about it, in a horror movie, the slasher villain always has this scene where like they get killed and everybody thinks he's dead, but all of a sudden, pieced out, gone, right? So they're really going through all of these things and trying to make them not funny, but in a documentary way, like a behind the music
They're
kind
answering
of way.
the question, oh, how does he get shot? Well, he's wearing a vest, right? Yeah. How is he keeping up with him? Well, it's because he's not actually just walking. He's walking insanely fast, but it just looks like he's walking. How does he get from over here to over there? Yeah. Well, he practices basically fucking parkour, and he sets everything. Well, how do every time they hit him with an axe, it doesn't work? Well, because he pre-cuts the blade, the handles. They address every complaint you have about cheap slasher movies. Yeah. And they do so in such a way, and they talk about it in such a way, that within this movie, all of the slasher universes are real. He doesn't talk about... Yeah. He doesn't talk about Freddy like he's talking about the movie Freddy. He talks about Freddy like the way you talk about somebody on the news, or somebody that you work with, or somebody that you like. Oh man, remember that one time I was at the grocery store and I met some famous asshole? Like, he talks about it like they're real people. And he talks about like, oh, can you believe, I mean, this guy, he comes back like once every fucking 5 years, and he terrorizes he finds a new girl, and he terrorizes a new group of friends, and he's just a legend. And everything is so real. There is zero mysticism. It makes it it portrays slashers not as some sort of like mystical, absurd, larger than life like monsters, right? But it portrays them as craftspeople, as butchers, or as bakers, or
and the cool thing about this is these slashers, they could take place in this could take place in the same universe that Cabin in the Woods does. Cabin in the Woods was filmed much later than this, but also holds that kind of like, this is why slashers do and how these things do what they do.
It's all set up.
It's all set up. It's all part of the thing.
It's all about the fear, and that's really the plot here. Is that Leslie Vernon and his mentor both talk about how what they are is they are crafters of fear. They're crafts people, like a trade, but their trade is fear. What they're doing when he selects the virgin to survive, right, is like inevitably, and he talks about like the the phallic nature of a lot of these tropes and the sexual nature of a lot of these tropes and a lot of the weirdnesses in it and stuff like that. But what he's talking about is he's taking a person who's like almost at the edge of afraid of life and bringing them to a point in time and in themselves where they're strong enough to just fucking grab an axe and go haymaker on some motherfucker, even though all of their friends are dead and they're far enough ahead in the run that they could make it to civilization. But that's not what they're here for. They're here to discover within themselves that power through fear, through horror, to fucking pick up the axe and turn around and charge Freddy or charge Jason or charge Leslie.
Well, and the way that they talk about it
it's like enlightenment. They talk about it like almost religiously.
Well, and the way that they talk about it is not to glorify the inevitable deaths that you see in a slasher flick either. Yeah. Which is interesting and is also very similar to what Cabin in the Woods does.
He says something that he would almost prefer if he didn't have to kill people.
Yeah.
But the virgin girl has to see her friends die to become that strong. Yeah.
Now, there is a twist at the end of the second act, and I don't want to give it away.
Oh, yeah, we're not going to give away any twist. This is an older movie. It's twist, on Netflix.
Yeah, oh, yeah, this movie is probably 20 years old now. Yeah. I feel like this movie is on Netflix. We watched on Shudder. We signed up for Shudder, and we're really excited because we're super huge movie fans.
So many movies on that
we wanted to watch something we'd already seen before, and I was like, obviously, it's this movie, one of my favorites.
It was either this or Elvira, and so be prepared for an Elvira review, because we're probably going to watch that next.
Yeah. But... So, the twist at the end of this movie is something that maybe you would see ahead of time, but is done so exquisitely that it doesn't even matter if you see the twist. And we have our own like headcanon fanfic about like if there was a sequel and how they would do that.
There's a part of me that wants to write the sequel to this movie. As a like moderately horror writer, I want to write a sequel to this.
Yeah, I think you should.
I have this headcanon idea about how this movie how the sequel needs to go, all 3 acts, and part of me just wants to like put it down on paper. But the movie is such a full universe. You get a lot of horror movies, right? And a lot of even the horror movies that we watch, they have plot and they have substance, but there's always that like, well, but this doesn't make any sense, or like, well, it's a movie. This movie is really fucking grounded in reality.
Yeah.
Everything is explained in this like oh, you know, she always sees us like this, and then I have to go over there. He's like, listen, this is how you practice like standing here and looking at somebody, right? And then like running over here and doing this. You practice appearing dead. You practice fucking martial arts and like high speed running and speed walking, and it makes. Again, it's
and understanding the psychology of it.
The psychology behind what the intent is.
Robert Englund also is in this movie, a horror movie legend.
Yeah, totally.
So, at the risk of giving away... Yeah, he's the Ahab.
He's the Ahab.
At the risk of giving away more about this movie than we want to, even though this movie's been out for a long time, I feel like not a lot of people have seen it. At the risk of giving away too much... I would say I give this a 10 out of 5. This is an absolute gem. I love this movie so much. When you watch it, make sure to watch through the credits because it is important.
Yeah, you gotta see everything that happens in the credits. Yeah.
Sing along to the song if you know it.
It's yeah. You know what? Logically you can't go above 5 out of 5. You know, like on IMDb, if there's 5 stars, you can't click on 6 stars. I understand that. So, like, I logically have to say it's 5 out of 5 stars, but I want to agree that it's 10 out of 5 stars because this movie makes watching a Halloween movie or a Freddy Krueger movie or a Jason movie more like how I wonder if he set that up. I wonder.
Yeah, like it makes every other horror movie have more depth.
Slasher movies almost like in a purposeful way. This really is. This is up there with Cabin in the Woods in those movies that are, as a standalone thought, perfect.
Yeah.
But as part of a universe of a style of movies, slasher movies, haunting movies, monster movies,
it makes
cabin
them
movies,
enriching.
You know, it enriches the whole genre by its very specific and amazing nature. Right? It's so good that it makes arguably a bunch of shitty Halloween movies really fucking good.
Yeah.
You know? Because some of those Halloween movies, real fucking dumb.
So, have you guys seen this movie?
Yeah.
What do you think about it? Do you think that John should write a fanfic sequel to this?
Fanfic sequel?
Tell us in the comments below.
I could write a short fanfic sequel and then just do a reading.
Share, comment, subscribe.
Yeah, ring the bell, do all that kind of shit. I've been John Norgrove. This has been Wife. This was Review Jive. We did Behind the Mask. Some tale about Leslie Vernon. I don't remember what the exact is.
The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
This is one of those fucking, I hate titles like that. One of those Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Just Behind the Mask is fine, but that's okay. I want more. I want more of this.
I want so much more.
I want more horror. This is one of those movies
like
that
this.
If you're not a horror fan, also, I don't think there are any jump scares in this. No, I know. I don't think there are any jump scares in this. If you're not a horror movie fan, you can still watch this.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is honestly not a scary movie.
No.
It's just horror themed, and that's the important part. So, again, go fucking see this movie. But I wanted to make sure, if you're not a horror fan, you can still see this. Trust me. But yeah. Fuck you guys. We're out.